Hello guys, welcome to another session. In today's lecture, we will be diving into some of the most essential and very much exam relevant aspect of Indian polity. In this session, we'll be focusing on the powers and functions of President of India and also the structure and functioning of the Council of Ministers. So these topics actually forms the core of our understanding of Indian parliamentary session, and I can assure you by the end of this lecture, you will have a clear clarity on topics like impeachment, veto powers, ordinance making power, the discretionary power, the collective and individual responsibilities, and the classification of ministers within the council. Again, guys, these topics are not only critical for prelims but also very much important for mains, especially in governance and polity related questions. So in paper 2, in your GS paper 2, you have the governance area. From there you can expect questions directly, and these are highly scoring also. So what we can do is we can start with Article 61, or we can start with the impeachment of president. Okay. See, this can be a very much potential question for prelims also, the procedure and other things. So the impeachment process that can begin in either Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. It's not confined to one house alone. So either Rajya Sabha or Lok Sabha, the process can start. And only ground for impeachment is violation of constitution. So violation of constitution. Remember that nothing else is a ground for impeachment. Now, the constitution does not specifically define what constitution constitute a violation. So here, when you talk about violation of constitution, it's not very much specifically given. So what you will do is you will be interpreting it as based on the context and case by case basis. So a lot of discretion is there. So a lot of questions will be there that we need to answer. Of course, for example, if the president does not act according to the advice of Council of Ministers, what is that? In constitution, it is mentioned that the president have to work upon the advice of Council of Ministers. So if the president is not acting upon the advice of Council of Ministers, or if not according to the Council of Ministers, then it's a clear violation that will constitute a ground for impeachment. So I hope this is clear. Okay. So violation of constitution is the ground for impeachment. Now, what's the procedure? So if they want to initiate the impeachment process, 1/4 of the members of initiating house must support the motion. So the motion must be supported by 1/4 of the members, and a 14-day notice is to be served to the president. And after the notice period, the motion must be passed by a 2/3 of majority of the total membership of that house. Okay, so 2/3 of majority is what is actually required. You can these are factual questions. And then it will be sent to the other house. So if it is initiated in Rajya Sabha, it will be sent to Lok Sabha. If it's initiated in Lok Sabha, after that it will be sent to Rajya Sabha, which again performs a kind of investigative function, and this makes the process a kind of quasi-judicial process. So further investigation will be there in the other house, and the second house also need to pass the motion by the similar majority, the 2/3 of majority, and both the houses approve. Then the president stands impeached and removed. So it initiate in one house, right? And the conditions I've mentioned already, notice period I've mentioned already, majority I've mentioned, and then it moved to the other house where there will be again an investigation. So that means it's a quasi-judicial process, and again you need to pass it by 2/3 of majority. And if both the houses passes the motion, then of course the president stands impeached. So the president has the right to defend himself, either personally he can do or through an attorney he can do. This is again part of natural justice only, and of course in accordance with the principle of natural justice. So natural justice means no one should be punished unheard. So you should be getting the opportunity to defend any allegations which is made against you. So that principle of natural justice will be followed in any case if it's a kind of punishment, right? So if any action is taken as way of punishment, there will be natural justice. At least it has to be given. So that's about impeachment. Now let's talk about another important topic. That's the veto power of president. There are 4 types of veto. We have the president have absolute veto, suspensive veto, pocket veto, and veto over the constitutional amendment bills. So let's start with the first one. That's the absolute veto. See, the president refuses to give assent to the bill. So simply, he refused to give. The bill has to be given to the president, and he has to give the assent to the bill finally, right? So before that, there are process. I'm not talking about that. Now the bill came to the president. He simply refused to give assent to the bill. So what will happen? The bill dies and does not become a law. So simply, president is not giving his assent to bill, right? But generally, it's used for the private member bills, or bills rejected by the council of ministers, like that only, because it requires advice of council of ministers, right? So this is the first case, and then it comes to suspensive veto. Suspensive veto means president returned the bill to parliament for reconsideration. So president, the bill he received, and if there is any difference of opinion or whatever, he can return it to the parliament for reconsideration. But if parliament passes it again with or without changes, parliament, it's absolute discretion of the parliament whether to make a change or not. But if parliament is sending it again to the president, president must have to give the consent assent. Okay, so it could be without modification or with modification, whatever, president have to give the assent. So the next one is the pocket veto. See, president keep the bill pending without any time limit, right? So initially, that's a absolute veto where the president refused to give the assent. Second case, he returned, and then once it get back, he have to give this consent. And the third case, he simply keep it with him without any time limit. So no action will be taken here. The bill, neither get rejected nor get accepted here. So it's not accepted, not given consent or assent, nor refused also. So here, no requirement of advice from the Council of Ministers. Okay. Now, the next is veto over the constitutional amendment bill. In cases of bills which comes under Article 368, the president have no discretion here. Okay. So Article 368, there's no discretion. Once passed by both the houses by a special majority and the state ratification whenever it is required. So you know how the process of passing the constitutional amendment bill, right? It's actually a tough process, special majority, some cases ratification by the states, which is required. And if it is done, then the president must have to give the assent. There is no other choice. For example, if you see in one case, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam used suspensive veto on the Office of Profit Bill and, send it back to the parliament also. So, yeah, rarely presidents will do that, but Mr. APJ Abdul Kalam have done that in case of Office of Profit Bill. So guys, now then we'll talk about discretionary powers of presidency. I told you the president mostly acts on the advice of Council of Ministers. There are few occasions where he can act on his discretion when there is no party or coalition have a clear majority in the Lok Sabha. So that situation, president can invite any leader whom he believes can prove majority. So that's his discretion. So there is no clear, no party or coalition have a clear majority. So kind of hangings, parliament kind of setup, right? So there is no majority. So clearly you cannot say this guy is going to make the, Council of Ministers or anything, right? So then what you can do, president can invite the leader from any party. But thing is that, he have to prove that majority where he believed that he can prove the majority. So these powers actually limited and very rare, but they in fact play a very crucial role in government formation. That time it's very important. Next is something which is again very important. They used to ask earlier a lot of questions from this topic in mains, Article 123, ordinance making power. See, this is a legislative power of the president, right? So we talk about executive power, legislative power, and all those things. This is the legislative power of the president. So the president can promulgate ordinances when parliament is not in session. Either one house is not in session or both houses not in session, president can promulgate the ordinance. And the ordinance has the same effect as law which is passed by the parliament. So just like the law passed by the parliament, the president ordinance also have the same backup and the same effect also. And the ordinance must be approved within 6 weeks of reassembly of the parliament. That's again something which has to be followed. So president passed the ordinance and it must be approved within 6 months or 6 weeks, I'm sorry, of reassembly of the parliament. And the maximum duration of an ordinance can last 6 months and 6 weeks, right? Because 6 months, 6 weeks, you will have that initial period and then 6 months. So the president can amend or repeal existing laws using the ordinance power also. So the duration is 6 months, but again, that permission that you are supposed to get is within, it's get approved within 6 weeks. So that 6 weeks also can be added. So 6 months, 6 weeks, you can say that's the maximum duration of the ordinance. So see, again, ordinance is also subject to judicial review. As I told you, it's similar to any law which is made by the parliament. So this is also subject to judicial review. And if any ordinance passed by the president, if it violates the fundamental right, it can struck down under Article 13. So you can directly approach the Supreme Court and it can struck down as it is violating the fundamental right. Now, financial power of the president. All the financial proposals, including the annual budget, are actually presented before Parliament in the name of the president. So that itself, showing that financial power of president. The reports of UPSC, the National Commission for SC, ST, OBCs, all these reports actually are laid before Parliament by the president only. Money bill, when we discuss about different types of bills, so money bill requires president recommendation before its introduction. So these are important financial powers of president. Now, judicial power of president. See, president has the power to grant pardon, reprieve, respite, remission, and commutation of any offense, right? Any punishment. So when we talk about pardon, means complete cancellation of punishment or any conviction. So the court has given the conviction or the punishment, so president can completely pardon that. So complete cancellation of the punishment or that conviction itself, and then reprieve. That means, but again, it will be depending upon the advice of Council of Ministers only. So reprieve means temporary delay in the execution. Respite means lesser form of punishment due to special conditions. Might have given rigorous imprisonment, so it can convert to simple imprisonment, right? Or if it's a life imprisonment, it can convert to some other kind of lesser imprisonment, right? Similarly, remission, that means reduction in the length of the sentence. Just like I told you, 10 years might be reduced to 7 years, something like that. Okay, then commutation. That means changing one form of punishment to the other. For example, death sentence is given, that will be changed to the life imprisonment. So again, these powers help to uphold the spirit of justice and mercy. Now, the next is Council of Ministers. See, in the Indian parliamentary system, when we talk about, the president is the nominal head, right? But the real executive power actually lies with the Council of Ministers, which is headed by the Prime Minister. So when we talk about Council of Ministers, it includes, that's very much important for you to understand. It's the cabinet minister, that's the senior most ministers, the head ministries, they attend the cabinet meeting and all, right? These are cabinet ministers. Then again, ministers of state, they may have independent charge or assist the cabinet ministers. Then we have deputy ministers, like the junior most ministers, they assist the other ministers. Now, we need to see the parliamentary secretaries also. They are not part of Council of Ministers. Okay. So again, when we talk about Council of Ministers, the parliamentary secretaries are not part of Council of Ministers. I think once this was asked in prelims. So the term cabinet was inserted by the 44th constitutional amendment. All these are factual questions. Now let's talk about the collective responsibility and individual responsibility. Collective responsibility is mentioned under Article 75(3), right? And individual responsibility, Article 75(2). So when we talk about collective responsibility, the Council of Ministers is collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha. So a decision taken by the cabinet is binding on all the ministers. If one disagree, they must resign, and that ensures the unity. Okay, so that's what collective responsibility is all about. And when we talk about individual responsibility, the ministers hold office during the pleasure of the president. So president act as PM's, prime minister's advice to remove ministers. So that basically ensures that individual ministers conform to the collective decisions. So that's about individual responsibility. For example, like a cricket team win or lose together, right? So similarly, ministers share the success as well as failures collectively. That's exactly what we can talk as an example. Then comes constitutional conventions. See, these are unwritten rules that are generally followed in practice. So conventions, these are not written rules, these are unwritten rules, but generally followed, like speaker from the ruling party, deputy speaker from the opposition, president give assent to money bills, and 3 sessions of parliament held yearly. So these are unwritten rules, but generally followed. These are what you mean by constitutional convention. So though it's unwritten, they carry moral and legal weight, and that ensures a smooth functioning. And the next term that I want to discuss is the caretaker government. See, caretaker government comes into play when the Lok Sabha is dissolved, when the PM dies, and the government loses majority. So these are the 3 situations. So based on Article 74, which mandates that president must always have a council of ministers to aid and advise him, right? So that's Article 74. So the caretaker government handles routine administration and avoid taking major policy decision unless it is necessary. That should be like in the cases of wars you may have to take such kind of major decision. So it lasts until the new government is formed. That's actually the job of caretaker government. So that's all what I want to discuss. And if I want to wrap up today's session, we have covered wide range of crucial topics. We examined the detailed procedure of impeachment, and we understood all the types of veto powers. We also tried to grasp the ordinance making powers of president and the process as well. And we saw how the Council of Ministers function in a parliamentary system. And we have also learned about the principle of collective and individual responsibility, the constitutional convention, and the concept of caretaker government. Guys, these topics are very, very, very important and central to understanding how India's constitutional machinery operate. Stick to Lakshmikant for all these topics and student in and out. Remember, 90% of priority questions come from these areas, and with proper revision and practice, you can attempt with very high accuracy, and these are easily crackable questions. And don't miss out on any question if you get from these topics. So our next session will talk about parliament, speaker, panchayat raj institutions, etc., which again are equally important for both prelims as well as mains. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you are looking for any mentorship or test series or consultation, you can get in touch with us. The details are given in the description. See you in the next session. Thank you so much.